All right. Thank you all for the switch to Zoom today and for joining us. I appreciate it. We do have a few things on the agenda that we need to um, get through. And I know we've got two guests. We've got our first selectman, John Zagrodzky, and town council, Wayne Fox, who have very graciously offered to help us out a little bit, particularly with the first item on the agenda. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it, if that's okay. So the first item that we're going to be talking about is the Gorm Pond Dam, and the basically the RTM is being asked to vote on a appropriation for repairs to the dam due to storm damage from Ida in 2021. And this committee is not voting on or reporting on the financial impacts. That'll be the Board of Finance, or the Finance Committee. And Public Works is going to report on specifically on the work that's needed and why these repairs are needed and what they are. But our committee has been asked to report on the status, not the status, but on this issue because the dam is actually leased by the town. The dam was initially leased by the town in, I believe, the 1920s. It was a 100-year lease, and we are currently in a situation where that lease that was signed has ended by its terms, but by common law in Connecticut, it is continued as a year-to-year lease. So since it is a lease structure and that lease is now in this year-to-year, we thought it was important that this committee be able to report to the RTM that we support the fact that the town is putting additional money into this structure. I should say that the town, per the lease, is required to repair any storm damage, which is why it's important to acknowledge that this storm damage is from Ida in 2021, which is when the lease was still fully in effect. So this requirement, under any circumstance, we would need to do this repair work. But again, just thought it was important for the RTM to hear from us, since we're responsible for any town leases, that we are reporting in favor of this project going forward.
Amy, my ignorance, but from who is the lessor?
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, so that's kind of the problem. The lessor, and that this is precisely why we have Wayne and John on the call today. So I'll try to summarize it, but allow them to have a chance to speak as well. So the lessor was, at the time, a number of the families surrounding the dam were the owners. And the issue is that normally when you have land that's attached to a lot, when the lot changes hands, let's say it was a private road or something like that, it would change hands with the lots. This dam did not clearly change hands, so who is the lessor is a bit of a question.
It conveys with the property?
Well, it should have, but based on the title search work that the town council has done, it didn't. So that's part of the reason why we're not just going forward and just renewing the lease, because who to ask to renew the lease with is not abundantly clear. Wayne, is that a good summary?
Yes. I think one important factor to consider is that these repairs need to be done. They occurred at a time where the obligation was to us to repair them. So in a sense, other than deciding whether or not you folks want to spend that kind of money or authorize that kind of money to be spent, whose name it is now at the present time, and the fact that we haven't not been able to find most of these folks is almost irrelevant.
No, you're right. I agree with you.
Can I just ask a quick question? I don't know. Usually when you lease something, like you lease a house, you're not liable for the repairs or the damage. Is it different with this sort of thing where, like, it almost seems like we own it because we have to fix it, we have to do all the stuff to it? How does a lease like this work? in terms of why are we
Weigh in
accepting
on
so
this.
much liability and so much
Yeah,
need
just
to
a-
repair and things like that? I'm just trying to understand.
A couple of things about this lease. So it was members of the original Gorham family or descendants of that negotiated all this. The lease was effective February of 1924. It was a 99-year lease. The payment on the lease was 1 cent per year. I don't know if we've ever paid it or what happened, but it was just 1 cent. In exchange for such a low lease, the lease does in fact stipulate that all repairs, anything that has to do anything with this bridge, are the sole and exclusive responsibility of the town. So to Wayne's and Amy's point, the storm damage that we experienced in 2021 actually was still within the lease term. And so as a technical matter, we're obligated to make those repairs, and that language is quite clear in the lease. So I think dividing up this question or problem in a few parts is helpful. So part one, to Wayne's point, does the RTM need to support an appropriation to fund the repairs to the Rings End Bridge and Dam under the terms of the lease? The answer is conclusively yes. There's no question about that. I think there's a second question, which I think is more debatable, which is, okay, well, now that we're past February of 2023, that's when this lease expired. And so what Wayne and company went and tried to do is say, okay, well, who are we supposed to call to now renegotiate this lease? And they have come up with no one, right? They've not been able to find any of heirs to any of the people who signed this lease. So we don't know who to engage with to have a discussion about this. To Amy's point, the rule is a common law provision that says, look, if you've got a lease like this and the lessor hasn't said anything and hasn't negotiated or asked for different terms or decided to end the lease, you're within your rights to simply continue the lease as is forever, simply because the lease does roll over and you're allowed to continue that as you have in the past, absent some action by the lessor. So if they're not saying anything, we simply continue as we have for the last century, and we essentially manage and maintain that bridge just like we always have. There's a second consideration that says, well, maybe what we should do is just go ahead and somehow assume ownership and make this an owned town asset. That would require an eminent domain process. Again, there's a question about who to direct the eminent domain process to, because we don't know who the owners or the heirs to the owners are. I think it's reasonable to say that that would be a difficult process. We don't know exactly how to value that bridge. It could actually be something that's worth a lot given the land and the location and all of that, or it could be worth very little when you say, well, it's a unique piece of property that really can't be developed and it's got a lot of expenses associated with it. So maybe the value of the land is nothing. And so we don't really know all that. That's all very uncertain. My concluding thought on all this is my recommendation, based on listening to Wayne and talking with others and even separately with Amy, my recommendation is go ahead and approve the money to fix the bridge. As for what to do going forward, I would let sleeping dogs lie. I don't think there's any need to go in and stir the pot and try to find somebody to either renegotiate the lease or proceed with an eminent domain process. It doesn't really change anything other than load up the town with additional expense, either from a legal standpoint to pursue eminent domain or to actually pay these owners to buy the bridge. They may come out of the woodwork at some point. I know this is recorded in public, and God bless them if they hear this and want to come forward, that's great. But I think at this point, it would make sense for us to leave things as they are.
Just one final point.
Matter in hand is simply, do we approve the work to the bridge? And that seems to me to be a no-brainer, that we're obligated to do it and therefore we should support it.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I think there's the idea of the legality and the practicality. So practically, we need to maintain that, right? But you also mentioned the word lessor. Do we have an identified lessor, or are we just?
So that's the whole point, right? Which is they went out and they looked for heirs to the individuals who signed the original lease in 1924, and they've come up dry. We don't.
So is it just by default that we have through common law that we are claiming that we have some sort of.
And I'll let
How do you
Amy
have a
talk
lease
about
without a
that.
lessor? That's where I'm
Yeah.
confused.
So by common law, so we have a lease, and anytime you have a lease where the you just it just extends by
I got
common
it.
law on a year-to-year basis. So
Okay.
we don't have to identify who
Okay.
the lessor is. And I
Right.
think, and I also want to clarify one point that John made, is that this is the dam. The town does own the road, Rings
Yes.
End Road, that goes over the bridge. So we're, there is ownership. And also, to go back to Emily's point, it is not that uncommon to have a lease of this nature where the rent is paying to maintain the structure.
That's
It's
very common.
yeah.
I see.
So
Okay.
it's not what you might see in a residential situation, but it is. I have actually even seen residential leases that are this way, where you take on all the expenses and that's your rent, which is really what this
And
was.
this lease
Can I
is
just ask
crystal clear.
one quick question about the current property lines in terms of
Mhm.
this dam? Does it intersect with current ownership of private property today, where some of the property goes onto someone's lawn or house, that it could be complicated?
We attempted to have a survey done. We were not able to come up with any meets and bounds. But in spite of that, I think the answer to your question is no, it doesn't impose on other folks' property.
And again, this is something that has been in place for a century, so we're not introducing anything new. We're not starting the pot. We're not affecting existing owners. We're not disturbing anything by this sort of sleeping dogs lie strategy.
It feels a little bit like a legal limbo.
But
Sort of
that's
like
not
a
a bad.
I mean, I think
a gray area.
we should separate the issues. The issue
Right.
at hand is repairing the bridge, and we are very clearly, as Wayne pointed out,
Absolutely.
obligated to do that. The other
Absolutely.
is a bigger and potential issue that John's put a recommendation together of the sleeping dogs lie approach, and that's a whole separate discussion. But the matter at hand for tonight, Amy, tell me if I'm misstating, is dealing with the repair of the bridge.
Yes, so that's correct. And I think what I think is important is for our committee to report that we are in favor, again, not that we're necessarily in favor of the money or the work, because that's other committees, but that there's nothing that we have been informed about the lease that would cause us to not report favorably on going forward with this work.
Got it.
And Amy and I and John have talked about this a number of times, and we are all in agreement.
Yes.
Is there anything with the fixing of the bridge that involves raising the bridge or dealing with ongoing flooding from recent years that we had that's going to cause an exorbitant cost, unexpected cost to the town?
Well, this is, again, that'll be more in the area of public works. I mean, I'll let John respond to that, but this is specifically to repair the damage. And what you will hear from the Board of Finance is that this is also work that we're anticipating getting funding back from, I think it's from FEMA for this work.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is no. Keep in mind, this is an iconic bridge, and changing it in a substantial way that increases capacity or does any of that sort of thing is not something that you could do, from an historical or aesthetic manner, let alone engineering. And so these costs really are to restore it to what it was and keep it in place. So
I want to clarify the point of our meeting and our job today. You're basically saying that you're advising us that there's nothing legally that holds us back from approving us continuing a common law lease on the dam so that we can maintain the repairs on it. Is that specific to what we're doing today?
I think that's accurate, but in addition to that, I think it's important to realize again, it's not a question of what we want to do, it's a question of what we have an obligation to do.
Okay.
We should repair that building.
but to be
I just
more
wanted to
clear-
make sure I understood specifically what my role was in this today, and it's specific to the lease, not in terms, and you're providing the context for that, but my role today is in terms of the lease so that we can do that.
Yeah, just to be more precise on your point, is that if we continue the lease on the basis of common law
Right.
after February of 2023, which is when the original 99-year lease expired, right? The precept of that is going to say, okay, we will now be we're going to continue to be responsible for these kinds of repairs going forward. So
Those are the terms of the lease.
That's the terms of the lease. And if we're
Got
going
it.
to elect in a common law sense to say we're going to continue all this, that's fantastic. That means we're going to adhere to all the terms of the lease, one of which is the paragraph that says you're responsible for all these costs going
Got
forward.
it.
And that's okay because we've been doing that for a century.
So did we
Correct.
continue the lease from that expiration date, or are we back
There's no
doing the lease from
this
that
is-
point forward?
This is a paper-free decision, right? The old
Okay.
lease, interestingly, if you go into the archives in the town hall, the old lease is on giant paper about this big and is written out by hand. It's not typed or anything. So it's, we just point to that lease and say the lessors did not renew it, and therefore, based on common law, we are simply continuing
Got
the
it.
lease in place as is.
Yeah,
And,
the
and more importantly, it's not that the lessors didn't renew it, the lessors didn't end it.
Got it.
It's
They
better.
gave the option to continue it year to year as a common law kind of practice.
Yeah, well, and absent,
100 years
to Amy's point, absent their taking action to end the lease, we are
Right.
within our right under common law
Got it.
to continue it as is.
Thank you
the
for
other
that.
point-
Thank you for the clarification.
I think the other point that's going to be important to make sure we communicate to the body is that even if we were not going to continue through a common law with the lease, even if we were not going to, we're still obligated to do these repairs under the terms of the original lease.
Yes, that is correct.
Correct.
Very precisely, we don't have to rely on this common law thing, right?
Yeah.
Because this all happened before February of 2020.
We are obligated to do this work, even if we wanted to blow up the dam,
No
never have a
question.
lease
Oh,
again.
because it happened during the active
Well,
lease
yes.
period? Or- okay.
Yeah, February
Okay.
of 2023 was the expiration of the original
Okay.
lease.
All
But
right.
to be clear, by signing up for this common law extension provision, we are
Mhm.
extending that obligation into the future. And that's
Got
it.
The point for this vote for the RTM, I think it's really important to be clear that regardless of how people may feel or the questions they have about common law go forward, forgetting that, let's just say there were another 100 years on the lease. We are still obligated to do this repair regardless, whether we walked away from the lease or whether we extended the lease.
Mhm.
I think that's, while that is true, I think the point of us reporting is to give the RTM comfort
Agreed.
in continuing.
You know,
I think it's also just important to make sure that they realize that that is an obligation regardless of that. That's my only.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So, Wayne, can I ask you a question? Since this is, I want to report, and again, I want to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard, but I just want to be clear on one thing. Since I just want to report that we don't have any concerns, I'm not reporting on a lease. Do I need a vote of this committee? I do want to get a sense of where everyone feels, but do I actually need to vote on anything?
I think, Amy, the only thing you need to or should vote on is the funding for the repairs of the bridge. That's the only
But
thing.
we're not, but this committee doesn't vote on that. We'll be voting on that at the RTM.
Mhm.
Okay.
F&B will comment on that.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing is, you know, I don't know how much you want to really harp on the lease point.
That's where I was going,
Part of
John.
the reason for Wayne and I joining this discussion, again, this is all public record, we're not trying to hide anything, is just that this is a very nuanced point. And we think strategically this is the right way to proceed, and certainly not unfair. These families have had this lease in place for an awfully long time, and they are more than welcome to pursue change in that if they can assemble themselves and come to us. In the meantime, we will await their call, and that's all this is. And we're allowed to continue the lease as it was, absent their outreach. And so let's just leave that alone. That's it.
Got it.
I don't know that we need to
100%
discuss.
agree with John.
Yes, I agree too.
Okay.
So,
Anything else for me? I'm turning orange into a pumpkin. What else do you?
yes,
We all
no,
just say
that's
we
that's
agree.
fine.
Just raise our
Yeah.
hands and agree, or do we need to do that?
Yeah, well, why don't I unless there's further questions for John and Wayne, let's let them go, and then we'll
Thank
continue on.
Thanks, guys.
You guys are
Bye.
stars. Thanks for doing all this.
Thank you.
This is very
Thank you for
important
your
work.
time.
Anytime you need our help, we're right here for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Amy. We'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Adios.
I,
Good night now.
So I think rather than, like I said, rather than take a vote, because we're not really voting on the resolution itself, what I would like is just if there's anyone that has an objection to my reporting in favor, for you to raise your hand or speak up. Seeing none. Betty, I can't see you. Are you on board?
because the legality of it is already there. It doesn't matter if we confirm.
Yeah, it's an obligation we have on the existing lease.
Got it.
Right. Yeah.
Not
There have been some questions raised, so I think it is helpful to have this sort of, as John said, out in the open, what we're doing, which is the reason that we're being asked to report on it. But at the same time, as you say, I don't want to overdo it, but at the same time, I think it's important that, we're aware of the situation.
I agree. I just think we just have to be careful on how we frame it that night, so it doesn't open up 3 hours of discussion about what is a common law lease and why are we doing this and what have we done exactly to find the lessor. I mean, you know where I'm going with it.
Yes. So to that point, I will, since this is a little nuanced, I will make sure to send around my report in advance of the meeting. So if anyone has any comments, or they can raise them. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All good.
All right.
Betty's now unmuted if you want to get her assent.
Thank
Betty,
you.
are you on board? Well, we'll go with yes.
Now she's muted again.
So the next thing on the agenda is also something we don't need to vote on. Originally, before John was beat up at the tree meeting, he was just going to give us a little bit of an update on Great Island. So I will just say that there is a visioning meeting on September 21st. I sent around the flyer to you all. There is a lot of discussion, was at the Great Island Committee's meeting on Monday, or at least I was told. I actually haven't had a chance to watch that meeting yet. But I do want to really encourage people to attend one of the two meetings on the 21st. If you can't attend, there's going to be ways to submit online, submit any comments on how you'd like to see Great Island used. But
This
please,
is a public meeting.
It's a public visioning meeting. So it's going to be an opportunity to sort of, you can go on to the island. There's going to be two. There's going to be one at Town Hall and with photos, and one on Great Island, so people can really get onto the island, see it, and give their opinions on what they want to see for the future. And really encourage your friends to go. This is really our chance to guide how we want this process to move forward. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now to something we actually do really need to vote on, because we're primary, is the Eversource easements at Royal Homes and Henley. So I don't know if you all got a chance to look at those. I'm sorry I sent them around so late in the day. But basically, Eversource needs to cross on to these three properties in order to serve the schools with electricity. Of course, they've been serving the schools forever, but this is not an uncommon situation with Eversource when there's sort of new electric hookups for them to go ahead and make sure everything's documented. It's Eversource's standard agreement as far as, you can't, where their facilities can be, and not building anything that would impair them. The last page of each of the documents does have a map of where the easement area would be. It's basically from the road to get to the buildings. Did anyone have any questions about any of those?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
My
Michael, you're so
question
fancy.
sorry.
No, wrong one. I'll get the right one up. There's the right one.
My only question would be, are any additional poles coming up, or, anything along the road that I guess would require construction of additional poles?
Let's see, Mike, can you scroll all the way? Oh, let me see.
Oh,
Let
God,
me go
do it
down
again.
to I've got it on mine too. Let's see. Oops. Oh my gosh, I did the same thing.
You have the ability to share.
Okay, give me 1 second, because I don't have that.
And or tree removal, because I know this is a hotbed issue, so.
Right, the tree removal is.
I'm just asking for informational purposes, so.
Yeah. So if you look at the actual map of the leased area, you can see where the existing poles are.
Mhm.
Let's see.
I
You
didn't
want
print
me
that
to-
out, sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Let me do screen share. Here we go. Sorry, this is a little bit small, but the hatched area, this one is the one at this is Henley. So you can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's the pole on the far side of Nearwater. You can see the wire going across. So mostly what Eversource will always do is try to be in the area where there's pavement. So let me see if I can pull up one of the other ones. Are you still looking at my screen? I'm not sure what you're looking
Yeah.
at right now.
We can see the resolution now.
Okay, you can see a new resolution. Okay. So then this one is Royal. It's an even smaller area that they're looking at. And again, you can see, let me see if I can make this bigger so you can see where the wires are. Yeah, so they're going on to, they are going to have some, it looks like some transformers probably on the property. They generally don't put poles up on property. They will go underground at that point to transformers. Let me see if I've got the one that's the largest is actually the one at Royal, which is this one. So you can see again, there's an existing pole here, and then the wires go onto the property to a transformer.
It looks like it's all under pavement. It looks pretty benign and direct from the road.
Correct. Yes. Which is what that Eversource generally does try to do. The problem, and one of the things that they put into these easements, sort of to your point about trees, is they put language in there that talks about, not planting any trees within 5 feet of any of their structures so that they don't have to get into the business of trimming and taking down trees. It's where you run into problems with it is where there's been sort of trees have grown up over the years next to poles.
Mhm.
All right. So any other questions or concerns? I think we need to vote on each one of these separately since it's a separate resolution.
Mhm.
So can I get a show of hands in support of the Eversource easement on Royal property? Betty, are you a yes?
Yes.
Great. I guess I should really be doing this as a motion. Gosh, I'm out of practice. Can I get a motion to approve the Eversource easement on Holmes property?
I will make that motion.
All right.
I'll
And
second.
Michelle second. Erica second. All right. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Yes. Okay. And can I get a motion to approve the Eversource easements on Henley?
I'll make a motion to approve the Eversource on Henley.
Okay.
I'll second Amy.
All right. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And then since I did it wrong on Royal, can we redo that one?
Sure.
Can I get a motion to approve the Eversource easement at Royal?
Sure,
All right, we got Sandra in motion, Michael,
that's
and
fine.
then all in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you. Sorry for that.
All good.
Thanks. All right, so the next thing that we have is the town union contract, which has been renegotiated. This is mainly an F&B matter, but since we have there are 10 staff members within planning and zoning and building, which is sort of our responsibility, which are covered by this contract. It was asked that we speak on it. So I sent around the summary. This was a heavily negotiated through mediation. So I don't want to, I'm personally not very interested in second guessing any of the decisions that have been made, but it does seem to be not overly burdensome on the town. And I certainly want to continue to support our staff in the building department and planning and zoning department. Well, frankly, all of town hall, but in particular, those two departments, because I personally think that we have some great employees there. So did anyone have any questions or concerns about the document?
Not on my end.
No. Okay.
It's hard to say, not knowing what the prior contract was.
Yeah.
It's really hard to know what's normal or what's being increased, but it looks normal. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like I said,
I think we'll get,
Go ahead, Amy.
go ahead.
You first.
Well, I was going to say, I do think we're going to get a much more in-depth discussion from F&B when they report more completely on it. I do think there was some discussion about whether we should even report on it at all, but Jack had sort of said he'd like to have the other committees, speaking on behalf of their employees. So I agree with you. I don't have all the answers.
The union negotiated it. I mean, so if they negotiated and agreed, then I assume that they're good with it.
Well, yes, this was done through mediation between the town and the union.
Okay.
Michael, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, we're good.
Okay. All right. So can I get a motion to support the not rejecting the union contract?
Let's see if I can remember. A motion to approve not rejecting the contract.
There we go. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks. All in favor? Aye.
It's one of those memory tests.
Exactly, or a triple
Or saying my
negative there.
wedding vows or something.
Sounds like there's a good story there.
The last thing that I had on our agenda was I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, and I think not all of us, but most of us were on this committee when we had George Riley come in and talk to us about the Blight Review Board. And at that time, there was some interest from our committee in particular, from a few people about wanting to be the RTM rep on that committee. So Ed Washeka, who had been the RTM rep on the committee, has moved on to the Park and Rec Commission. So he's no longer part of the RTM. So there will be I'm not exactly sure how the vote, maybe, I don't know, Mike or Michael, do you know from our rules how the vote for the new Blight person is going to go forward at the RTM meeting?
Seth's going to send out an email to the entire body indicating that the position is available, and if you're interested, to let him know. And then if there's more than one candidate, each candidate will be offered the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes on why they're interested in Blight. The email that Seth is sending out will also contain an executive summary of what exactly the Blight Committee does and what its obligations are and what its abilities are. So, and so if there's more than one candidate, there'll be a vote. And unfortunately, it's going to, because we haven't changed the ordinance yet, it will be like the Ethics Committee. So one candidate will have to get at least 50%. So hopefully it will go quicker than the Ethics Committee elections.
Exactly. And if anyone has any interest in Blight or has any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can. I was the RTM rep until the prior person. I had to step down because of a change in schedule, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone may have either now or just reach out to me anytime.
And I can also, maybe what I'll also do is I can send around the link to the meeting that we had where George presented to us. But I just wanted to sort of raise that because I personally think that it is most appropriate that it be someone from this committee that be on the Blight Review Board. So just because of where our responsibilities lie.
I smile because part of me is interested because it's sort of in my wheelhouse and that I believe there's an element of social work there.
There is.
As a MFT, it's kind of in my field of expertise a little bit. I also have a husband who's a contractor, so but it's kind of marries, and I used to have my real estate license, so it kind of is my area. I'm concerned about time obligation. So if I if I commit to something, I want to be fully present for it. So that's my only hesitation.
And then candidly, Erica, that's why I stepped down. It wasn't that it was too big of a time commitment, but the meetings are in person on at least unless they've changed, in person Wednesdays at 5 or 5:30. And it was a time that I just couldn't make.
Hard. Like these times are better because
Yes.
kids are asleep and it's quite, I see I'm hiding in a dark room. Nobody talked to me.
For me at the time,
But I feel a certain response. I know that I would be good at that because it is my wheelhouse. So I'm kind of ducking and covering and see if someone else will step forward and if no one does, maybe I will. But right now I'm holding on to that a little bit. Just between us.
Thank you. Thank you for considering it.
It's not a ton of work. It's not a ton of work, and the work between meetings was pleasant. It was driving by things and taking a look, and then just so that you were prepared for the actual meetings when you were reviewing the situations. There wasn't much work out of that. It was just for me the schedule of I was in the city a lot more at the time, and I couldn't commit to be here for Wednesdays.
Okay. I'm considering it. Let's see when Seth brings it to the floor if we get outpouring of interest, and if not, maybe I'll step forward.
All right. Well, thank you for considering it, and thank you all for your time and quick adjustment to meeting a different way. Since this is a regular meeting, we have an opportunity if anyone has any other business they want to put before the committee. No? All right. Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. I will I will plan to get around my proposed report to the RTM early next week, because we have another week until the RTM meeting on the 23rd. And I really do appreciate any feedback you have. Like I said, I don't want to overstate anything, but at the same time, I just think it's important that the RTM understands what, the status of that facility as we move forward. So with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Have a good
Bye.
night.